The sun hung low over Atlanta, painting the sky in streaks of burnt orange and deep crimson that seemed to set the clouds on fire. Centennial Olympic Park had transformed into a living organism of sound and movement, 50,000 bodies swaying as one beneath the dying light of day. The stage rose like a metal cathedral at the far end of the field, its scaffolding wrapped in LED screens that pulsed with colors not yet unleashed. The opening acts had warmed the crowd for hours, and now the anticipation had reached a fever pitch that Lieutenant Sarah Collins could feel thrumming through the soles of her boots. She stood near the eastern perimeter fence, one hand resting on the leash connected to the tactical harness of her partner. Max sat at her side, his rust and black coat catching the amber light, ears rotating like satellite dishes as he processed the symphony of stimuli surrounding them. His dark eyes swept the crowd with an intensity that belied his calm posture. 7 years of partnership had taught Sarah to read every twitch of those ears, every shift of that muscular frame, and right now something was off. The Malinois had been restless since they arrived 3 hours ago for what was supposed to be routine security support. The festival organizers had requested K-9 units as a precaution, standard procedure for events of this magnitude. Sarah had walked the perimeter twice, checked the vendor areas, swept the backstage compound. Max had alerted on nothing, but he had not settled either. She watched him now as the roadies made their final preparations on stage. His nostrils flared with each breath, pulling in air and sorting through thousands of scents with a precision no machine could match. His head kept turning toward the stage, not with the casual interest of a dog watching movement, but with the locked focus of a predator tracking prey. The crowd roared as the house lights dimmed. Giant screens flanking the stage burst to life with animated graphics, and the first thunderous chord of an electric guitar split the air like lightning. Vanguard had taken the stage. The headlining band was Atlanta royalty, 4 musicians who had risen from underground clubs to arena tours in less than 5 years. Their lead singer, Marcus Webb, gripped the microphone stand with both hands and leaned into the audience as if he could embrace all 50,000 of them at once. Sarah felt Max tense beside her. His body had gone rigid, every muscle coiled beneath his coat. She dropped to one knee, bringing her face close to his. The dog did not look at her. His gaze remained fixed on the stage, on something beyond the lights and the spectacle that she could not see. A low sound built in his throat, not quite a growl, more like a vibration of warning. She had seen this behavior before, in warehouses where drugs were hidden behind false walls, in vehicles where weapons lay concealed beneath custom panels, in buildings where danger waited in places human eyes would never think to look. Max was alerting, not on the crowd, not on the perimeter, on the stage itself. Sarah stood and keyed her radio. The music was so loud she had to press the earpiece deep into her canal to hear anything. "Dispatch, this is Collins with K-9 Unit 7. I have a possible alert near the main stage at Centennial, requesting guidance." Static crackled. The dispatcher's voice came through, broken by interference from the massive speaker arrays. "Collins, confirm nature of alert. Explosives or narcotics?" Sarah watched Max. The dog had risen to his feet, his body angled forward, weight on his front paws. He was ready to move. Every instinct he possessed was screaming at him to close the distance to whatever he had detected. Unknown at this time, "My partner is indicating the stage area. I need to get closer to confirm. Stand by, Collins. Checking with Event Command." She did not have time to stand by. Max pulled against the leash, not lunging but insisting. His training kept him from breaking position, but his body language was unmistakable. Whatever was on that stage, it was not supposed to be there. Sarah made a decision. She unclipped the radio from her belt and switched to the secondary channel used by the private security teams. "This is Lieutenant Collins, Atlanta PD K-9. I need access to the stage area immediately." "Who is your command officer?" A voice responded through heavy static. Hansen here. Stage is locked down during performance. No access without artist approval. I have a K-9 alert on your stage. This is not a request. Silence stretched for 3 beats of the bass drum thundering from the speakers. What kind of alert? The kind that means I need to get up there right now. More silence. Sarah could imagine the security chief weighing his options, calculating the nightmare of interrupting a show against the potential catastrophe of ignoring a bomb dog. East Side Stairs. I will meet you there. Sarah moved. Max surged ahead of her, no longer content to walk at heel. He pulled her through the crowd control barriers, past startled security guards who stepped aside at the sight of her uniform and the determined dog leading her forward. The music seemed to grow louder with each step, the bass reverberating through her chest like a second heartbeat. The east stairs were a metal framework bolted to the side of the stage structure, used by technicians to access the lighting rigs and sound equipment during shows. A man in a black polo shirt with security emblazoned across the back stood at the base, his face tight with concern. "Hansen," she said, not slowing down. He fell into step beside her as she started up the stairs. "What exactly is your dog hitting on? I will know when he shows me." The stairs vibrated with every beat from the drum kit above. Sarah could feel the entire structure swaying slightly, engineered to flex rather than fight the sonic assault. Max climbed ahead of her, his claws clicking on the metal grating, his focus never wavering. They emerged onto the side stage area, a narrow corridor of black-painted plywood and cable runs that separated the performers from the technical infrastructure. Roadies in matching crew shirts moved with practiced efficiency, adjusting equipment and monitoring levels. None of them paid attention to the officer and dog pushing through their workspace. Max stopped. His body went rigid again, head lowered, nostrils working. He turned slowly, orienting himself, then moved to the left with deliberate purpose. Sarah followed. They passed racks of guitars on stands, cases stacked 3 high, monitors and amplifiers arranged in precise configurations. The dog ignored all of it. He was tracking something specific, following an invisible trail through the chaos of backstage equipment. The crowd roared as Marcus Webb launched into the chorus of their biggest hit. The sound was physical at this range, a wall of noise that made Sarah's eardrums ache. She watched Max navigate around a stack of road cases, his movements economical and certain. He stopped in front of a black case, roughly the size of a refrigerator. It sat among a dozen identical cases, all of them bearing the band's logo stenciled in silver. Max sat. His head came up. He looked at Sarah with eyes that held absolute certainty. This was it. Whatever had drawn him across that field, through that crowd, up those stairs, it was inside this case. Sarah turned to Hansen. "Clear this area. Get everyone back at least 50 feet. Do it quietly." The security chief paled. "You think it is a bomb? I think my dog has never been wrong. Move these people now." Hansen began herding the nearby technicians away from the case, his voice calm but urgent. Sarah keyed her radio again. "Dispatch, this is Collins. I have a confirmed K-9 alert on the equipment case side stage at Centennial. Case is approximately 6 feet tall, 3 feet wide, marked with band logo. Requesting bomb squad and immediate coordination with event command." The response came faster this time. "Bomb squad en route. ETA 12 minutes. Event command is notifying artist management. What is your assessment?" Sarah stared at the case. It looked identical to the others. No visible wires, no unusual markings, nothing to suggest it did not belong exactly where it sat. "Assessment is that my partner is alerting aggressively on this container. I recommend immediate show stop and controlled evacuation. Copy that, Collins. Stand by for event command decision." She wanted to scream, "Stand by!" The words that haunted every first responder. Stand by while someone else made decisions. Stand by while the clock ticked toward an outcome no one could predict. Max had not moved. He remained in his alert posture, a living statue pointing at the case. His training was absolute. He would hold that position until she released him or the world ended, whichever came first. Hansen returned to her side. "My people are clear. What now?" "Now we wait for someone to decide whether saving 50,000 lives is worth ruining a concert." The security chief's jaw tightened. "I can pull the band. Tell them there is a technical issue. They are in the middle of a song. Look at that crowd. You pull the plug now, you create a stampede. So what do we do?" Sarah had no good answer. Every option carried risk. Evacuate and cause panic. Wait and potentially detonate. Storm the stage and start a riot. The mathematics of disaster offered no clean solutions. Her radio crackled. "Collins, Event Command, has decided to complete current song, then announced technical difficulties. Controlled stage clear in approximately 4 minutes. Hold your position. 4 minutes." Sarah looked at Max. The dog had not flinched. 4 minutes was an eternity when you were standing next to something that might kill you. She knelt beside her partner and placed a hand on his shoulder. His muscles were rock-hard beneath the fur, every fiber of his being focused on the task he had been trained to perform. She had never doubted him, not once in 7 years. If Max said there was danger in that case, then there was danger in that case. The song built toward its crescendo. Marcus Webb prowled the front of the stage, his voice soaring over the wall of guitars. The crowd surged against the barriers, arms raised, faces twisted in ecstasy. They had no idea. 50,000 people lost in the music, unaware that their lives might depend on the instincts of a 70-pound dog and the decisions of strangers they would never meet. Sarah counted seconds in her head. The song had maybe 90 seconds left. Then the announcement, then the clear. Then the bomb squad would arrive and she could step back and let the experts do their work. Her earpiece crackled with a new voice. "Collins, this is Captain Rivera with the bomb unit. We are 5 minutes out. What can you tell me about the container?" Sarah described the case in detail, its position, its markings, the lack of visible modifications. Rivera asked about odors, about sounds, about anything unusual in the immediate area. She had nothing to offer beyond Max's alert. "Understood. Do not approach the container. Do not attempt to open it. Keep all personnel at minimum 50 feet until we arrive." The song ended. The crowd screamed for more. Marcus Webb raised his hands, basking in the adulation. And Sarah saw the moment when someone spoke into his ear monitor. The singer's expression flickered, confusion giving way to concern. But he was a professional. He grabbed the microphone. "Atlanta, you have been incredible tonight. We love you. We are going to take a quick break to sort out some technical stuff, but do not go anywhere. We will be right back." The crowd groaned in disappointment, but held their positions. The house lights came up slightly, just enough to break the spell of the performance. Roadies emerged from the wings, making a show of checking cables and adjusting equipment. Hansen touched Sarah's arm. "Band is clear. We are moving them to the green room." "Good. Get everyone else out too. No one stays on this stage." The evacuation was smooth and quiet. The technicians melted away through side exits. The band's equipment was left in place, creating the illusion that the show would resume at any moment. Within 2 minutes, Sarah and Max were alone on the side stage. She did not move from her position. If that case held what she feared, her presence would not affect the outcome. But leaving felt wrong. Abandoning her post, abandoning Max's alert, it went against everything she believed about the job. The crowd was growing restless. She could hear them chanting for the band, stomping their feet in rhythm, unaware that the delay had nothing to do with technical difficulties. The festival security teams were slowly expanding the buffer zone around the stage, moving people back without explaining why. It was a delicate dance, the kind of crowd management that could go wrong in 100 ways. "Collins, bomb squad is entering the venue now. ETA to your position 2 minutes." Sarah acknowledged. 2 minutes. She had been counting time since the alert, and the total was approaching 15 minutes. If the device in that case was on a timer, they were living on borrowed time. Max whined softly. It was the first sound he had made since alerting. She looked down at him, at his intelligent eyes and loyal heart, and felt a surge of gratitude that she could not express. He had done his job perfectly. Whatever happened next was out of his paws. She heard boots on the metal stairs, heavy footsteps, multiple sets, moving with practiced efficiency. Captain Rivera appeared first, a stocky man in full bomb armor, his face shield raised to show weathered features and calm eyes. Behind him came 2 more technicians in matching gear, carrying cases of equipment. Collins, good work getting us here fast. Show me what your dog found. Sarah stepped aside and let Max guide them. The dog remained locked on the case, his alert posture unchanged. Rivera approached slowly, circling the container without touching it, his eyes taking in every detail. Standard road case. Modified latches, he observed. See how the hardware is newer than the rest of the unit? Someone has been inside this recently. He produced a handheld scanner and passed it over the surface of the case. The device beeped softly, and Rivera's expression tightened, getting a reading, metallic components, chemical signatures consistent with accelerants. He looked at Sarah. Your dog is good. Never doubted him. Rivera keyed his own radio. Command, this is Bomb 1. We have a positive reading on the suspect container, requesting full venue evacuation and expansion of the perimeter to 500 meters. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Full evacuation, 500 meters. This was not a suspicious package anymore. This was a confirmed threat. The next several minutes unfolded with the controlled chaos of a well-rehearsed nightmare. Announcements began echoing from the speakers, calm voices directing the crowd toward exit points. Security teams that had been maintaining subtle distance now moved with obvious urgency, creating channels for the mass of humanity to flow towards safety. Helicopters appeared overhead, their spotlights sweeping the park as news crews caught wind of the developing situation. Sarah and Max were moved back with everyone else, pushed to the outer perimeter where a command post was rapidly taking shape. Fire trucks, ambulances, more police vehicles than she could count, all converging on Centennial Park as the sun finished its descent and darkness claimed the city. She found a spot near one of the mobile command units and sat on a concrete barrier, Max settling at her feet. The adrenaline that had carried her through the last hour was beginning to fade, leaving behind the hollow fatigue that always followed crisis. A familiar face appeared in the crowd of responders. Detective Marcus Stone pushed through the uniformed officers and stopped in front of her, his expression a mixture of relief and concern. Heard your dog crashed a concert. Thought I should come make sure you two were okay. We are fine, just tired. Stone crouched down and offered his hand to Max. The dog sniffed it politely, then returned his attention to the distant stage where the bomb technicians were still working. Any word on what they found? Not yet. Rivera's team is still assessing. As if summoned by his name, Captain Rivera emerged from the perimeter and walked toward the command post. His armor was off now, and his face was slick with sweat despite the cool evening air. He spotted Sarah and changed course. Collins, you need to see this. She followed him to a mobile forensics van, where a laptop displayed live feed from a camera mounted on one of the bomb squad robots. The image showed the inside of the road case, its contents illuminated by harsh LED lights. Sarah had expected wires and timers and the brutal geometry of explosive devices. What she saw instead was far more complex. The case had been modified into a sophisticated concealment system. A false bottom created a hidden compartment, roughly 2 feet deep, and within that compartment sat rows of sealed containers, each one marked with chemical hazard symbols. Not a bomb, Rivera said. Something worse. What is it? We are still running tests, but preliminary readings suggest organophosphates. Military grade. If these containers had been opened during the concert, with that crowd density and the air circulation from the outdoor venue, we would be looking at mass casualties. Sarah felt her stomach turn. Chemical weapons. Someone had smuggled chemical weapons into a music festival. Who had access to this case? That is what we need to find out. The case is registered to the band's equipment inventory. It should have been inspected before being loaded onto the stage, but somehow it passed through every checkpoint. Stone had joined them, his detective's instincts clearly engaged. Inside job. Has to be. Rivera pulled up another image, this one showing the latches that had first caught his attention. These modifications were not done in a hurry. Someone planned this. Someone with knowledge of the band's operations and access to their equipment. Sarah thought about the people she had seen backstage, the roadies and technicians who moved through that space with practiced ease. Any one of them could have placed those containers. Any one of them could be the person they were looking for. "We need to talk to the band's crew," she said. "Everyone who touched that case in the last 48 hours, already on it." Stone pulled out his phone. "I've got uniforms collecting names and holding everyone who was working backstage. Nobody leaves until we clear them." The next 3 hours were a blur of interviews and investigations. Sarah and Max worked alongside Stone and a growing team of detectives, methodically questioning every technician, roadie, and support staff member who had been near the stage. The band themselves were sequestered in a nearby hotel, their shock and confusion genuine as far as anyone could tell. The breakthrough came just after 11, when a nervous young man named Tyler Reed broke down under questioning. He was 23 years old, a guitar tech who had been with Vanguard for less than a year. He had not planted the weapons himself, but he knew who had. "His name is Garrett," Tyler said, his voice shaking. "Garrett Morrison. He is one of the riggers. He approached me 2 weeks ago, said he needed help moving some special equipment for a private client. I thought it was just bootleg merch or something. I never knew it was." He could not finish the sentence. Stone took over the interview while Sarah stepped outside to relay the information to Rivera and the hazmat team still working to safely remove the chemical containers. Garrett Morrison had vanished. His name was on the crew manifest, but no one had seen him since before the show started. Security footage showed him entering the venue at 6 in the morning, long before the rest of the crew arrived, and never leaving through any monitored exit. "He is still here," Sarah said. "Somewhere in this park he is watching." Max pressed against her leg, and she looked down at her partner. The dog was still alert, still working, despite the hours of stress. If Garrett Morrison was hiding somewhere nearby, there was one team that might be able to find him. "Can your dog track a specific person?" Stone asked. "If we have something with his scent." They found Morrison's jacket in the crew area, stuffed behind a stack of empty cases. Sarah let Max sniff the fabric, watched as the dog's nostrils flared and his brain processed the chemical signature of their target. "Such," she commanded. "Find him!" Max put his nose to the ground and began to move. They followed him through the backstage area, past abandoned equipment and discarded water bottles, through a service corridor that led toward the park's maintenance facilities. The trail was hours old and contaminated by thousands of other scents, but Max worked through it with patient determination. The maintenance building was dark when they reached it. Sarah drew her weapon and signaled for Stone to cover the rear entrance. 2 backup officers took positions on either side. "Atlanta PD," she called out. "Garrett Morrison, come out with your hands up." Silence answered. Max was pawing at the door, his alert behavior unmistakable. Someone was inside. She tried the handle, unlocked. The door swung open to reveal a cluttered space filled with lawn equipment and electrical panels. Emergency lighting cast long shadows across concrete floors. Max led them through the maze of machinery, his nose never leaving the ground. They passed rows of riding mowers, shelves of chemicals and tools, a break room with a refrigerator humming in the darkness. The dog stopped at a metal door marked electrical. His alert was immediate and intense. Stone moved into position. Sarah reached for the handle. The door burst outward. Garrett Morrison came through like a man possessed, a pipe wrench swinging for Sarah's head. She ducked under the blow and caught his wrist, using his momentum to spin him off balance. Stone was there in an instant, driving the man to the ground while Sarah kicked the wrench away. Morrison fought like a wild animal, screaming obscenities as they struggled to control him. Max barked once, sharp and commanding, and the sound seemed to break something in the man. He went limp, sobbing into the concrete floor. They cuffed him and dragged him into the light. Garrett Morrison was 31 years old, with a scraggly beard and hollow eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and desperate choices. He stank of sweat and fear. "Why?" Sarah demanded. 50,000 people. Why? Morrison laughed, a broken sound with no humor in it. "You want to know why? Ask Marcus Webb. Ask him about Chicago. Ask him about the girl who died." The interrogation that followed painted a picture of tragedy compounded by madness. 3 years earlier, Marcus Webb had been involved in a drunk driving accident after a concert in Chicago. The other vehicle had contained 2 people, a young woman and her fiancé. She had died at the scene. He had survived. Garrett Morrison was the survivor. The legal system had failed him, or so he believed. Webb's lawyers had negotiated the charges down to reckless driving. The singer had served 6 months of community service and paid a fine that was pocket change compared to his fortune. He had never apologized, never acknowledged the life he had destroyed. Morrison had spent 3 years planning his revenge. He had trained as a rigger specifically to get close to the band. He had made contacts in dark corners of the internet, arranging for the acquisition of chemical weapons that would have turned a concert into a graveyard. "She was going to be my wife," Morrison said, tears streaming down his face. And he just walked away, like she was nothing, like I was nothing. Sarah listened to the confession with a mixture of pity and horror. The man's grief was real. His pain was real, but so was the monstrous plan he had nearly executed. 50,000 people, she said, families, children, people who had nothing to do with what happened to your fiancé. Morrison looked at her with eyes that had forgotten how to see reason. They worship him. They buy his records and go to his shows and make him rich while she rots in the ground. They are not innocent. None of them are innocent. There was nothing more to say. They led him away to a waiting patrol car, his confession recorded and his fate sealed. The legal process would take months, but the outcome was certain. Garrett Morrison would spend the rest of his life in prison, his revenge thwarted by a dog with a perfect nose and a handler who trusted him absolutely. The park was empty by the time Sarah and Max emerged from the maintenance building. The festival grounds had been transformed into a crime scene, yellow tape fluttering in the night breeze, where stages and vendor booths had stood hours before. Emergency lights still pulsed from dozens of vehicles, but the urgency had faded into the methodical work of evidence collection and documentation. Sarah found a quiet spot near the edge of the command perimeter and sat down on the grass. Max settled beside her, his head coming to rest on her thigh. She stroked his ears absently, feeling the familiar texture of his fur beneath her fingers. "Hell of a night." She looked up to find Captain Rivera approaching with 2 cups of coffee. He handed her one and lowered himself to the grass with a grunt. "Your dog saved a lot of lives tonight." Sarah looked at Max. The dog's eyes were half closed, exhaustion finally catching up with him. "He is the best partner I have ever had." They sat in comfortable silence, drinking coffee and watching the cleanup crews begin their work. The sky had cleared, and stars were visible between the buildings of downtown Atlanta. It was almost peaceful, if you could forget what had almost happened on this ground. We recovered all of the containers, Rivera said eventually. Hazmat team confirmed military-grade sarin. If Morrison had managed to release it during the concert, we are talking casualties in the thousands, maybe tens of thousands. Sarah absorbed the information without reaction. She had known it was bad. Knowing exactly how bad did not change anything. How did he get the stuff? Still working on that. But based on what we found on his phone, he has been in contact with some very dangerous people overseas. This investigation is going to get much bigger before it gets smaller. She nodded. International terrorism, arms trafficking, conspiracy to commit mass murder. The federal agencies would be circling by morning, eager to add Morrison's case to their statistics. Listen, Rivera continued, I know your chief is going to want to keep this quiet. Bad for the city's image, concert bombing attempt, all of that. But your dog did something extraordinary tonight. People should know. Sarah shook her head. Max does not need publicity. He needs rest and a good meal and maybe a new chew toy. Everything else is just noise. Rivera smiled, the first real warmth she had seen from him all night. You are a good handler, Collins. The department is lucky to have you. He pushed himself to his feet with another grunt and walked away, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts and her partner. She finished her coffee and set the empty cup aside, then lay back on the grass with Max curled against her side. Above her, the stars wheeled slowly through their ancient patterns, indifferent to the drama of human existence. The call came 3 days later. Sarah was at her desk, buried in the paperwork that always followed major incidents, when her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She considered ignoring it, then remembered that half the federal government now had her contact information. Lieutenant Collins. Lieutenant, this is Rachel Torres. I am the manager for Vanguard. We met briefly the night of the incident, Sarah remembered. A sharp-featured woman in her 40s who had handled the band's evacuation with impressive calm. What can I do for you, Ms. Torres? The band would like to meet you. And your dog. They want to thank you personally for what you did. That is not necessary. We were just doing our job. Please, Lieutenant, this is important to them. To Marcus especially. He has not slept since he learned how close it came. He needs to look you in the eye and say the words. Sarah hesitated. Her instinct was to decline, to maintain the professional distance that kept the job manageable. But something in the woman's voice, a note of genuine distress beneath the polished exterior, made her reconsider. When? They are in town for one more night. Could you come to the hotel this evening? Around 7. She agreed and hung up, already regretting the decision. Meeting the people you saved was always complicated. They wanted you to be a hero, to represent something larger than the mundane reality of training and instinct and luck. They wanted a story they could tell themselves to make sense of their survival. Max lifted his head from his bed in the corner of the office, regarding her with curious eyes. We are going to a meeting tonight, she told him. Try not to drool on any rock stars. The hotel was one of Atlanta's finest, a towering structure of glass and steel that catered to celebrities and executives who could afford privacy. Sarah was met in the lobby by a security guard who escorted her to a private elevator. They rode in silence to the penthouse level. The suite was larger than her apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, lights glittering against the darkness like earthbound stars. The band was gathered in the living area, 4 men who looked much smaller without their stage presence amplifying them. Marcus Webb stood as Sarah and Max entered. He was tall and thin, with angular features and the haunted eyes of someone who had recently confronted his own mortality. He crossed the room and stopped in front of her, seeming to struggle for words. "I do not know how to thank you," he finally said. "I have been trying to write something, to find the right words, but nothing seems adequate. You do not need to thank me. You need to thank him." She gestured to Max, who was sitting at perfect attention, his ears pricked forward with interest. Marcus looked at the dog, and something shifted in his expression, a softening that stripped away the rock star facade and revealed the frightened human beneath. He knelt down slowly, bringing himself to Max's level. The dog allowed the approach, his tail giving a tentative wag. "Hey, boy, I hear you are the one who smelled out the bad guy." He reached out carefully, letting Max sniff his hand before attempting contact. The dog accepted the gesture and pushed his head into Marcus's palm, earning a surprised laugh from the singer. "He likes you," Sarah said. "The feeling is mutual." They spent an hour in that suite, sharing coffee and conversation while Max worked the room, accepting pets and praise from each band member in turn. The tension that had filled the space when Sarah arrived gradually dissolved into something approaching normalcy. Rachel Torres told Sarah about the security overhaul they had implemented since the incident. New screening procedures, background checks on all crew members, protocols for equipment inspection that would have caught Morrison's modifications. The music industry was watching, she said. What had almost happened at Centennial was a wake-up call for everyone. Marcus talked about the accident in Chicago, not defending himself, not making excuses, just telling the story with painful honesty. He had been young and stupid and drunk, and a woman had died because of his choices. He had let his lawyers handle everything, had hidden behind the legal system rather than facing what he had done. "I should have found him," Marcus said. "Morrison. I should have looked him in the eye and told him how sorry I was. Maybe if I had, none of this would have happened." Sarah thought about that, about the moments that shaped lives, the decisions that echoed through years and decades. Morrison's grief had curdled into something monstrous, but the seed had been planted by a young man who had never learned to take responsibility for his actions. "You cannot change the past," she said, "but you can change what happens next." Marcus nodded slowly, his eyes on Max. The dog had settled at his feet, apparently content to serve as a furry therapist for the troubled singer. "I'm going to set up a fund in her name for families of victims of drunk driving. It is not enough, but it is something. It is a start." They said their goodbyes at the elevator. Marcus pressed an envelope into Sarah's hand over her protests. "It is not for you. It is for the K-9 unit. Buy Max some of those fancy treats or whatever he likes. Just take it." She took it. The check inside was for $50,000, more than the unit's annual budget for supplies and training. It would buy a lot of treats. The ride down was quiet. Max leaned against her leg in the elevator, his warmth a comfort she had not known she needed. The weeks that followed brought a slow return to routine. The media frenzy faded as news stories captured the public's attention. The federal investigation expanded in directions Sarah was not cleared to know about. Morrison was indicted on enough charges to guarantee multiple life sentences. Sarah and Max went back to work. Drug busts and missing persons and the daily grind of police work that rarely made headlines but always mattered. They found a cache of fentanyl in a warehouse near the airport. They tracked a kidnapping suspect through 6 miles of wooded terrain. They did their job, day after day, partner beside partner, but something had changed in Sarah. The concert had forced her to confront truths she had spent years avoiding: the fragility of life, the randomness of fate, the thin barrier between ordinary days and extraordinary disasters. She started calling her mother more often. She accepted dinner invitations from colleagues she had kept at arm's length. She even went on a date, a nervous coffee meeting with a firefighter she met at an interdepartmental training exercise. Nothing came of it, but the act of trying felt like progress. Max noticed the changes. Dogs always did. He seemed more relaxed around her, more willing to play during their downtime, as if her loosening grip on control had freed something in him as well. The anniversary came faster than she expected. 1 year since the concert that never finished, the attack that never succeeded. The department held a small ceremony recognizing the officers and dogs who had responded that night. Sarah accepted a commendation she did not want and posed for photographs she would never look at. The real celebration happened later in her apartment with a steak dinner for two. Max got the bigger portion. "You earned it," she told him, watching him devour the meat with enthusiastic efficiency. "You earned everything." He finished eating and looked up at her with those dark, knowing eyes. 7 years of partnership had taught her to read his expressions, and what she saw now was simple contentment. He was not thinking about the concert or the chemicals or the man who had wanted to kill thousands. He was thinking about the steak in his belly and the person he loved sitting beside him. Sarah reached out and scratched behind his ears, feeling the familiar ridge of scar tissue from an old injury. He had given her everything, his instincts, his loyalty, his life in service of hers. "Same time next year," she promised. Max's tail thumped against the floor. The call came at 3 in the morning, pulling Sarah from dreamless sleep. She reached for her phone with practiced efficiency, already knowing it would be the department. "Collins. Lieutenant, this is dispatch. We have a situation at Hartsfield. Possible explosive device discovered during routine screening. Bomb squad is en route, but they are requesting K-9 support." She was already out of bed, reaching for her uniform. Max had risen from his spot on the floor, instantly alert. Details. Suspicious package in checked luggage. Screeners caught anomalies on the X-ray. They have isolated the bag and are evacuating that section of the terminal. ETA 20 minutes. She drove through empty streets, Max riding shotgun with his head out the window. The airport was visible from miles away, its lights blazing against the pre-dawn darkness. Emergency vehicles had already formed a perimeter around the main terminal. The bomb squad commander met her at the entrance. Sergeant Chen was a small woman with steady hands and a reputation for absolute competence. "Thanks for coming. We have got the bag isolated in the loading area. My team is setting up for remote inspection, but your dog might give us faster answers. Happy to help." They walked through eerily silent corridors, past shuttered shops and empty gate areas. The airport never truly closed, but evacuations like this came close. Sarah could feel the weight of the structure around her, the millions of travelers who pass through these halls every year, all of them trusting that someone was keeping them safe. The loading area was a vast underground space filled with conveyor systems and sorting equipment. In the center of the cleared zone sat a single piece of luggage, a black rolling suitcase that looked utterly ordinary. Max went to work. He circled the bag at a safe distance, his nose processing the chemical signatures that hung in the air. Sarah watched his body language, looking for the subtle shifts that would indicate an alert. Nothing came. Max completed his circuit and sat down, looking at her with an expression that clearly said, "This bag is boring." "He is not alerting," Sarah reported. Sergeant Chen frowned. "Our equipment is reading trace explosives. Something is in there. Could be residue, handler's hands, previous contents, cross-contamination at the checkpoint. Only one way to find out." The bomb robot approached the suitcase with mechanical patience, its camera arm extended, probing the seams and zippers for any signs of tampering. When the tech controlling it was satisfied, the mechanical claw grasped the main zipper and pulled. The bag fell open to reveal clothing, toiletries, and a leather shaving kit. The robot's sensors focused on the kit, identifying it as the source of the trace readings. Chen moved in with her team. They extracted the kit with surgical care and opened it to find an electric razor, aftershave, and a small glass vial. "Nitroglycerin tablets," the sergeant announced. "Prescription heart medication." Sarah exhaled. A false alarm. The chemical traces from the medication had triggered the screening equipment, leading to an evacuation and a middle-of-the-night call-out for nothing. "Sorry to drag you out here for this," Chen said. "Rather have a false alarm than a real one." Max did his job. They cleared the scene and returned the airport to normal operations. Sarah drove home through the first hints of sunrise, exhaustion pulling at her eyelids. Max dozed in the passenger seat, his breathing slow and even. This was the job. Long hours and false alarms, and the constant awareness that the next call might be the one that mattered. You could not live in crisis mode forever, but you could never fully relax either. She parked in her usual spot and sat for a moment, watching the sky lighten over Atlanta. The city was waking up around her, millions of people starting their days with no idea how close they had come to disaster a year ago, no idea that their safety depended on dogs who could smell danger and handlers who trusted them absolutely. "Come on," she said, opening the door. "Let us get some sleep." Max followed her inside, and she locked the door behind them. The summer brought heat that shimmered off the asphalt and turned patrol into an endurance test. Sarah adjusted their schedule to avoid the worst of it, working early mornings and late evenings when the temperature was bearable. Max handled the heat better than she did, but she still watched him carefully for signs of distress. August found them assigned to a joint task force targeting drug trafficking in the Southwest Corridor. The operation had been building for months, surveillance teams mapping networks and identifying key players. Now it was time to execute. The target location was a warehouse in an industrial district, a nondescript building that handled legitimate shipping during the day and moved product at night. Intelligence suggested a major shipment was scheduled for that evening, enough fentanyl to supply the city's dealers for weeks. Sarah and Max were positioned with the entry team, their job to clear the building and alert on any hidden contraband. They waited in the back of an unmarked van, listening to the radio chatter as the operation unfolded. "All units, this is command. We have visual confirmation of the delivery vehicle preparing to execute." The van's doors flew open. Sarah and Max hit the ground running, following the tactical team toward the warehouse's loading dock. Flashbangs detonated inside, their thunderous cracks echoing through the night. Shouts of police and commands to get down mingled with the sounds of boots and bodies. They entered through a side door, Max leading the way. The warehouse interior was chaos, suspects being taken down by officers in tactical gear, pallets of legitimate goods providing cover and concealment. Sarah let Max work, following his nose through the maze of shelving and crates. The dog alerted on a shipping container near the back of the building. It was marked as auto parts, destination listed as a dealer in Miami. Max sat and looked at her, his signal unmistakable. "We have got a hit," Sarah called out. "Container 873. The tactical team secured the area while others brought cutting tools. The container's lock was industrial grade, designed to resist tampering, but the hydraulic cutters made short work of it. Inside, stacked floor to ceiling, were boxes that definitely did not contain auto parts. The drug unit's testing kits confirmed what Max's nose had already told them. Pure fentanyl, enough to generate millions in street sales. The arrests came quickly after that. The operation netted 14 suspects, including 3 who had been on the DEA's most wanted list. The seizure was the largest in Atlanta's history, a major blow to the trafficking networks that fed addiction throughout the Southeast. Sarah received another commendation. Max received a new toy. The fall brought cooler temperatures and a changing of the guard at the department. Captain Morrison retired after 30 years, and his replacement was a younger officer named Captain Diana Reeves, who had made her reputation in community policing. She wanted to modernize the K-9 unit, to expand its role beyond drug detection and suspect apprehension. Sarah was skeptical at first. The unit worked because it focused on what it did best. Spreading resources thin to satisfy political goals seemed like a recipe for mediocrity. But Reeves surprised her. The new captain had done her homework. She understood the capabilities and limitations of working dogs, the intensive training required to maintain their skills, the partnership between handler and animal that made the whole system function. "I am not asking you to do more with less," Reeves explained at their first meeting. "I'm asking you to help me do more with more. There is funding available for expansion, but I need experienced handlers to make it work." "What kind of expansion?" "Search and rescue certification for more teams, accelerant detection dogs for the fire marshal, therapy dogs for victim services." "The K-9 program is one of the best things this department does. I want to build on that." Sarah considered the proposal. It would mean more responsibility, more administrative work, less time in the field with Max, but it would also mean more dogs doing more good, more partnerships like the one she treasured. "I will need to see the details before I commit." "Fair enough. Take a week to review the proposal. Then let us talk." The details were impressive. Reeves had secured grant funding from federal and private sources, enough to add 6 new dogs to the unit over the next 2 years. She had identified training facilities and established partnerships with programs that bred and raised working dogs. The plan was thorough and realistic, the work of someone who understood both the potential and the challenges. Sarah agreed to help. She would take on a supervisory role, overseeing the new handlers and their dogs, while continuing to work with Max. It was more than she had ever wanted from this job, but it felt right somehow. A natural evolution of the partnership she had built. Max turned 8 that winter. The years were beginning to show in the grey around his muzzle and the stiffness in his joints on cold mornings. His instincts remained sharp, his nose as reliable as ever, but the physical demands of the job were taking their toll. Sarah started thinking about the future. Most K-9 officers retired their dogs between 8 and 10 years, depending on the animal's health and capability. Max had earned an easy retirement, years of comfortable afternoons and leisurely walks, but she was not ready to let him go. Not yet. The veterinary assessment came back positive. Max was healthy for his age, his heart and lungs strong, his vision and hearing intact. He could continue working with modifications, shorter shifts, and lighter duties for at least another year. "You hear that?" Sarah told him after the appointment. "You are not getting rid of me that easily." Max wagged his tail and tried to steal the treats from her pocket. Spring arrived with a case that would test everything Sarah had learned in her years on the force. It started with a missing child, a 6-year-old boy named Tyler Washington, who had disappeared from a park in a residential neighborhood. The parents had looked away for just a moment, and when they turned back, he was gone. Sarah and Max were called in to assist with the search. They arrived at the park to find patrol officers already canvassing the area and detectives interviewing the distraught parents. "His favorite blanket," the mother said, pressing the worn fabric into Sarah's hands. "He goes everywhere with it. Can your dog find him with this?" Sarah let Max sniff the blanket, watching as his nostrils flared and his brain catalogued the scent. Then she gave the command, "Such, find Tyler." The dog put his nose to the ground and began to work. He moved through the park with methodical precision, sorting through the thousands of scents that crisscrossed the public space. Other dogs, food, garbage, the chemical signatures of humans who had nothing to do with their missing boy. Max followed a trail to the edge of the park, where a path led into a wooded area. He hesitated, circling, then pushed into the trees. Sarah followed, ducking under branches and climbing over fallen logs. The woods were dense, more wild than she had expected this close to residential streets. A child could get lost in here easily. The trail wound deeper into the forest. Max moved with increasing urgency, his body language shifting from search mode to something more intense. He was close. She could feel it. They emerged into a small clearing, and Sarah's heart stopped. A man stood at the far edge of the space, holding Tyler Washington in his arms. The boy was conscious but terrified, his small body rigid with fear. The man's face was twisted with desperation. "Stop right there," he said. "Do not come any closer." Sarah raised her hands, keeping her voice calm. I am a police officer. I am here to help. Let the boy go. I cannot do that. He is mine now. He belongs with me. Mentally ill, she assessed, possibly off medication. Unpredictable and dangerous. What is your name? She asked, taking a half step forward. Stay back. I will hurt him. I swear I will hurt him. Max growled, low and menacing. The dog had assessed the threat and was ready to act, but Sarah held him back. A sudden attack could startle the man into harming the child. Easy, boy, easy. The standoff stretched into minutes. Sarah talked, keeping her voice soothing, looking for any opening that would let her end this peacefully. Backup was surely on the way, but she could not wait for them. The situation was too volatile. The break came when Tyler started to cry. The sound seemed to pierce through the man's delusion, and his grip on the boy loosened slightly. It is okay, Sarah said, taking another step forward. You do not want to hurt him. I can see that. You are scared and you are confused, but you are not a bad person. Tears streamed down the man's face. I just wanted someone to love me. My family, they do not understand. No one understands. I understand. Let me help you. Let the boy go, and we can talk about this. The man looked at Tyler, at the terrified child in his arms, and something broke inside him. He set the boy down gently and sank to his knees, covering his face with his hands. Sarah moved. She scooped Tyler up and passed him to an officer who had silently approached through the trees, then turned to help secure the suspect. Max stood guard, his alertness unwavering until the situation was fully resolved. The aftermath was bittersweet. Tyler was reunited with his parents, traumatized but physically unharmed. The man, whose name was Gregory, was taken for psychiatric evaluation. He had stopped taking his medication weeks ago, and the voices had told him that the boy was the son he had always wanted. Sarah filed her report and went home to an empty apartment that felt emptier than usual. Cases like this one stayed with her. The intersection of mental illness and crime, the tragedy of lives derailed by disorders that no one asked for. Max pressed against her leg, and she sank to the floor beside him. He rested his head on her shoulder, his warmth a comfort she desperately needed. You did good today, she whispered. You always do. The retirement came sooner than she expected. Max's last day of active duty was a Tuesday in October, exactly 9 years after he had been assigned to Sarah as a gangly young dog with more energy than sense. The department held a small ceremony, presenting him with a toy badge and a lifetime supply of treats. Sarah stood at attention while the chief spoke about Max's service record. The drug seizures, the missing persons found, the concert attack prevented. It was an impressive list, but it did not capture the truth of what the dog meant to her. When the ceremony ended, she led Max to the parking lot and opened the passenger door of her personal vehicle. No more department SUV, no more equipment bags and tactical harnesses, just the two of them and whatever came next. Ready to go home, partner. Max jumped into the car and settled into the seat with the contentment of a job well done. Sarah drove through the city she had served for 15 years, past the neighborhoods and landmarks that held memories both good and bad. The job would continue without her, without Max. New handlers would rise to meet new challenges. The K-9 unit would grow and evolve. But this partnership, this bond, forged through years of shared purpose, was ending, not with tragedy or defeat, but with the quiet dignity of a mission completed. She pulled into the driveway of a small house she had purchased 3 months ago. It had a backyard, something she had never needed before. Now it was essential. Max followed her inside, his nails clicking on the hardwood floors as he explored this new territory. He found the dog bed she had set up in the corner of the living room and circled twice before settling into it with a satisfied grunt. Sarah sat down on the couch and watched him rest. 9 years of partnership had taught her to read every twitch of his body, every sound he made, every look he gave her. She knew him better than she knew herself in some ways. The world outside continued to turn. Crimes were committed and solved. People needed help. The work never ended. But here, in this quiet house with her retired partner dozing at her feet, Sarah allowed herself a moment of peace. They had done what they set out to do. They had served and protected. They had saved lives. That was enough. It had to be enough. Max opened one eye and looked at her, his tail giving a lazy wag. "Yeah," she said, smiling. "I love you too."